Namaste and hello. Welcome to SONAS, South Asia Nadi Sambad. SONAS aims to promote dialogue and sharing of perspectives among sectors, disciplines, geographic regions, and among generations about South Asian water challenges. We believe in wholeness of the hydrological cycle as a foundation to make rivers clean for people and freshwater biodiversity. Every week, we will present our water champions' written perspective and conversation on ideas towards sustainable water solutions. I am your host Ajay Dikshit. You can find us on Twitter at Nadi Sambad. These episodes will also be available in other podcast platforms. Please enjoy the conversation. Welcome and namaskar again. In today's episode, Dr. Munirul Qadir Mirza will talk about flood water management challenges in Dhaka city and South Asia broadly. Dr. Mirza, referring to floods and drought conditions, you say do not blame water.
Water follows the gravity rule. When there is rainfall and then water accumulates, if it could escape through the ditches or canals, then it will disappear to the river. Dhaka city is kind of 400 years old. The Dhaka city actually started growing, I would say, unplanned way. Due to depth of your spaces, people started, filling up these ditches, filling up the canals. Powerful people, they occupied these lands, and now water cannot escape anywhere. Flood has become actually a regular phenomenon in Dhaka city.
Bangladesh, it is a deltaic country. Major rivers of South Asia join the ocean. The Ganga, the Brahmaputra and Meghna. It is formed by the sediment brought by these rivers. And of course, flood would be a kind of regular phenomenon in Bangladesh.
People actually have been adapted to regular flooding. It is situated almost at the confluence of these three rivers. If there are simultaneous flood peak in the three rivers, then it is difficult for the water to actually drain out to the Bay of Bengal. In case of a severe flood, what we see actually, length of flooding is much higher in the central part of Bangladesh than the other parts, because accumulated water takes significant amount of time to drain out. So when this kind of situation occurs, also Dhaka city gets a significant amount of rainfall and then severe flooding. And as happened in 1988, two-thirds of Dhaka city was underwater. What the government did, they got this plan of embanking the Dhaka city from old style of your water management.
What would be an old style of water management, Dr. Mirza?
Old style of water management actually Bangladesh inherited when the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development and the World Bank planned and implemented the first water master plan. That is massive embanking your program all over the country and created flood control, drainage and irrigation and flood control and drainage projects in large scale program. At the time, actually, these environmental consequences were not studied or even not environmental assessments are the part of any kind of development program. And so what the government started doing, they started building your embankment around the Dhaka city. Now water cannot go anywhere again. And also the Dhaka's storm sewer system is very old. It could actually handle as much as 60 millimeter rain over a 24-hour period.
There have been huge debate about utility of embankments in the eastern Ganga plain. So was not those lessons brought to in these plans?
This is actually kind of historical legacy Bangladesh and other South Asian countries carry. If you look at the historical perspective of flood management or we call it water control, whatever, first obstruction was created with the creation of the railway lines.
Have an embankment.
Yeah, railway lines, they need to build the new roads and then put the railway tracks over it, and then water actually cannot pass through. And then came in 1954 and 55 huge floods in the then East Pakistan, United Nations sent a commission, World Bank commissions, this and that. Finally, the first water master plan started. It was released in 1964 and Bangladesh Water Development Board implemented so many water development projects. It created some positive aspects in terms of food production, but at the same time, it created a lot of environmental problems. For example, the floodplain fisheries wiped out in the flood control project, and now over the years, what happened? Then now your soil fertility has gone down, and also whole bunch of your environmental problems these projects have created.
You came from a town outside Dhaka. As a freshman, joined the Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. As a water engineer then, and you are a leading climate analyst now, what difference do you see?
I lived in Lakshmipur, that is in the rural Bangladesh, in the southern part of the country. It is actually on a floodplain. It is outside of Chandpur irrigation project area. There is no interference with the natural ecosystem there. Then when I came to Dhaka to study engineering in Bangladesh University of Engineering Technology, I came in touch with some of very brilliant professors. As well as when I started leaving government and working with private sector, they created a serious interest regarding water in me, especially its management and how it would contribute to the sustainable development of Bangladesh, in particular South Asia in general. Then I continued my master's in water resources engineering and my PhD in also water resources. In my PhD, I looked at your future flooding in Bangladesh under climate change. Transition from a water engineer to climate change and water engineering. When I was in government, I used to collaborate with Dr. Kazi Khalikuzaman Ahmed on this track to water negotiation project with India and Nepal. He got first climate change project from Ford Foundation.
When was this?
This one in 1991. It was a collaborative project with first with University of East Anglia and then University of Professor Richard Warwick was collaborating from University of East Anglia. Then he left East Anglia and joined University of Waikato in New Zealand. So it became a part of University of Waikato.
Tell us a little bit about this first track to water project with Bangladesh, India and Nepal. What did you do in this?
This project, it started 88, 89. You probably remember that I was visiting Kathmandu.
Yeah.
And staying in a hotel in Thamel.
Yes.
And you came to pick me up to have a dinner at your place.
Yes.
And it was raining and we walked all the way, got the glimpse of the beauty of the city. And then this project continued until 1993-94 actually. The Center for Policy Research in New Delhi, IDS in Kathmandu, and I believe also for the time being, you are also part of that project. This project, it created enormous information, especially communication mechanism with the civil society. And the results of this communication actually were transferred to the government level because these are government approved projects. Time to time, we sit down with them, we actually discussed with them what the thinking process of civil society and how they think water as a resource, how they think water should be managed, and how they think water should be a tool of cooperation. Water has become a big problem among the neighboring countries. I would say that one important achievement of that track to project is this 1996 Ganges Water Treaty. This track to negotiation facilitated enter into 25-year treaty on the sharing of the Ganges water.
So it was essentially academicians, government officials interacting, meeting over 3-4 years period, kind of understanding each other's problem, perspectives, ideas, and then kind of facilitating this change, particularly 1996 treaty.
It did facilitate the treaty because the civil society started building pressure on the respective governments. It helped entering into the treaty.
Idea is that in such negotiations, the presence of civil society outside the government actors in facilitating, creating the dialogue, communicating is very useful.
It is useful, but I say it has to be actually the give and take or communication has to be from both sides. Should not be one-sided. Government also needs to open up its mind to cooperate with the civil society. That will enhance the process of negotiations as well as that will enhance the capacity building of negotiations.
Now let's fast forward to 2010, 2015 or even 2020 compared to 1991. The discourse on climate change had kind of just begun, It was in 1992 the UNFCCC began. If I remember, in the tripartite cooperative civil society process, perhaps not so much discussions on climate change and its consequences. There was this communication, working together, sharing a perspective. How do you see that process, similar kind of a process, given that climate change impact and consequences have become more serious, challenging in Bangladesh, in India, as well as in Nepal? Do you see similar kind of conversation, similar kind of dialogue among these actors now?
I would say no, because each country is focusing unilaterally. This kind of discussion was supposed to have held in the South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation in that forum, but SARC is now dysfunctional actually. It has headquarters in Nepal, and you know better than me. At the regional level, SARC was the best forum to discuss this kind of negotiation, especially climate change and water, because climate change will have significant impact on water resources of South Asia. From upstream to the downstream, we will actually face different magnitude of problems, different magnitude of impacts of climate change on water resources. And the population of these countries increasing significantly. So water as a tool for development. We cannot survive without water. We need to judiciously use the water. We need to make a plan with all the co-basin countries how to use water in a best way, and so that we won't face this kind of problem, say, taking another 100 years in the perspective. It is very much necessary to bring in climate change issue in the water negotiation, and that is not happening.
Even on climate change questions, we have reports that talk about threat the Himalayan snow system and glaciers face. The glaciers are receding, amount of snow is ice deposits are going down. Analysis say that this change in the higher region is going to have consequences on the regional hydrology in the downstream areas. There you have a common threat that affects Nepal, Eastern India, and that affects Bangladesh. But still, despite having this example of sitting together, talking, getting into conversation, we have forgotten that example. We don't do that anymore.
No, we don't do it anymore. Because like at the policy level, water has become a non-issue now. We talk about the trade, migration of the people from one country to another country. We talk about economic cooperation, but we don't talk about the water cooperation or climate change cooperation or cooperation on disasters.
But the water, as you said rightly, is the essence of life. For economic development, you have to have water. And if climate change threatens this water, if climate change increases floods frequency, if climate change makes droughts happen frequently, then we have a problem. We cannot address this problem singularly. You have to come together.
Yes, of course, because, it is the common river basin, yeah? From Nepal to the delta of Bangladesh, it is a common river basin. And we need very massive program of how to manage the problems together, not unilaterally. Because unilateral solutions would create actually problem either in the upstream or in the downstream. One of the major part of this program should be open exchange of information, especially the hydrological information. And what we are getting is very, very limited amount of information are now communicated to the co-basin countries. But we actually need the real-time information sharing from all these river basins.
Let me ask you about people, common farmers, low landholders, depend on rivers. Clearly, any change in the sequence of flow, hydrological character, extreme floods or drought conditions in river is going to affect these people seriously.
What we see now, we see actually changing pattern of precipitation. When I was a kid, we saw continuous rainfall for a few days, no stop. Now what we see is like significant amount of rainfall over a short spell of time.
Yeah.
No rain for significant amount of time. This kind of rainfall pattern is problematic for agriculture planning. For agriculture, we need significant amount of rainfall. Total amount may be same, but the episodes are changing. So this water management for agriculture is becoming very uncertain. This country needs cooperative program on how to manage water resources, how to best way to share technologies for drought management and flood management. Also, in broader sense, the management of agriculture. That kind of cooperation is there, but not at the level it is supposed to be.
On one side, you have the risks increasing significantly. On the other side, each country is trying to do things unilaterally, and the problems are becoming more and more serious. Do you see hope in countries, not just the government, but also academics, civil society actors, others, coming together in trying to kind of understand these problems and find solutions that minimize the threat?
There is always a hope because all these countries have made significant progress in agriculture development and also water resources management. But the problem is we need actually right forum for that. A kind of institutional arrangement for information sharing, also launching cooperative programs. The vision of SARC was actually, initially the vision was to launch many cooperative programs on many areas among these countries. But I think that SARC, the one best way to do is to revive the SARC and strengthen it with creation of scientific bodies, start cooperative programs, participation of all South Asian countries, and we also need massive investment of resources for that.
If I could summarize what you have said, I think what we need is a arrangement for more scientific and environmental cooperation. We need to increase our investment in research, and then not just research but also sharing of that research findings, sharing of information. Those are the kind of things I think which are very crucial, and that's I think something that we have, though we did in the early 90s, somehow we have forgotten our own experience, our own learnings.
Yes, I think the participation of civil society in this kind of activities has significantly gone down. Those have to be revived, and at the same time the cooperation at the government levels also has to be revived, and some countries, those are supposed to take the lead, actually initiative should come from them first. Thinking South Asia is the one piece of cooperative object of cooperation is very important for the sustainable development, improvement of livelihood of the people and their well-being, and also the improvement of ecosystem and the improvement of all the rivers and tributaries and the entire water hydro ecosystem is very important. I am not sure how the policy makers are thinking, but what we are observing now, unilateral activities, fragmented approach, what it will do, this kind of initiative will do actually, it will create more problems than solutions.
On that note, thank you Dr. Mirza for highlighting the fact that we need to begin to think about, at least from an hydrological perspective, South Asia as one, or maybe Ganga Basin from that perspective and that idea, and then to think about water integrity, think about the ecosystem quality, think about livelihood, and then come together on those values and on those attributes, something worthwhile. Thank you very much for your time and the conversation, and we'll look forward to see you again.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mirza, for emphasizing the importance of open access information for holistic management of water in the Ganga Basin. In the next episode, Pallav Raz, Nepal, discusses the challenges and opportunities of providing WAS services in the hills of Nepal's Sudur Paschim Pradesh.
Mobilizing credits through the cooperatives. Nowadays, the cooperatives are also interested to take operation and management part of those water supply schemes as well, and they are encouraging to get affiliation with those cooperatives.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We warmly welcome your suggestions for improving SONAS and our conversations. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have enjoyed the conversation. Till then, have a nice time and Jai Hos.